Welcome, everybody. This is the Home Learning Journey, advice for parents and grandparents. This is a webinar from Next Vista for Learning, and our goal is to give you all sorts of good ideas. I am joined with this webinar by a colleague, Tatiana LaGarde. We're going to introduce ourselves here in just a minute, but do know that as we talk about this, our focus is on elementary learners. We do believe that there are ideas in there that can be useful to people who have kids at all ages, but I do hope that you'll see us as focusing on the elementary level for what we're doing today. With enough of an interest, we can do more of these. But stay in touch with us. Let us know what you think. We welcome your feedback as we go. You'll see a lot of images in these slides. That's because the idea is for them to take the visuals and take what we say to another level to give you kind of another way. But when we get to the questions, we will make sure that those questions are text on the screen so that you'll be able to do that. Thanks to all of you for joining us. I hope that, as I said, this will be useful, and that you'll also share what we're doing with others. You'll find lots of webinars on the Next Vista webinars page. So loads of information for teachers and for school leaders and how they can deal with our rather interesting environment that we have at the moment. So let's meet you. I want you to meet my colleague, Tatiana. Tatiana, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Rushton. I'm a former high school teacher and have been on a home learning journey with my own children for the last 3 years. I currently have a grade 2 student and a kindergartner, and I'm hoping to use some of my experience home learning to answer any questions that may come up and share my experience with you guys. Thank you so much.
And my name is Rushton Hurley. I'm a former teacher, a former principal, and I run a nonprofit called Next Vista for Learning. And Next Vista's goal is to highlight creative approaches to teaching and learning by and for teachers and students around the world. I hope you'll give that a look as we move along. Now, a little bit about how this works. We'll start with a number of kind of open ideas that are designed to help you get a frame for how this works and how we're going to be talking about the different topics that we cover. And then we will cover some resources along the way as well. These resources will be collected and available to you on the Next Vista webinars page. So I'll make sure you have that link both in the chat and by the time we finish. And then also I will email anyone who registered so that you've got the information from this as well. So with that, I'd like to begin. And as I mentioned, what we're going to do is I'm going to turn my camera off as I cover just some basics, but hopefully this will give you a good frame for where we're going with this. So my first idea for you is that we want to embrace complexity. Now, one important point of departure is that simple answers with learning rarely will give you what you need. Teaching is as much an art as a science, and it's not simply about content. What we are looking to do is build academic confidence, and that requires curiosity, creativity, and self-direction, and this typically requires plenty of nuance. Now, take the question of screen time. How much is too much? Now, that depends on a load of factors, right? Most notably, what kind of screen time is a child getting? The American Academy of Pediatrics distinguishes between recreational and positive screen time, right? Positive time might be an educational game, a virtual field trip, or even a video chat with family in other places. Recreational time might be video games or TV, but even there, it might be that the game is helping develop a level of determination to solve a challenge, and a TV show watched and discussed together with family might be helpful as well. So complexity may mean you just don't know the answer to a question. Now, that's our next piece. It is often a great moment for learning when an adult looks at a child and says, I don't know. So to the youngest children, parents are often all-powerful and all-knowing, right? And that may feel good, but the sooner you set it aside, the easier it may be to help a child know that you can escape and able to help as they encounter new things. When you say straight up that you don't know something and then model how to figure out an answer, you're modeling self-directed learning, which is a fundamental goal. In schools, we sometimes call these teachable moments, and they speak to another important thing to know about the world now. One worry many parents have is that the months off from classroom learning will hurt a child irreparably. That's a worry you can take off your plate. What really matters is that children have really good moments in their learning. You could be in class for dozens of hours, hundreds even, and get very little out of it. Think back to your own schooling. There may be classes from elementary school or later for which you remember almost nothing. But you could come to a class regularly and have powerful wow moments that allow you to see the world and yourself in new ways. The question is not how many minutes of learning a student has, but how many great moments of learning that we set in motion. This can come from bringing together different topics through a cool connection or question, and to optimize this, keep yourself organized. What do you cover and what seemed to stand out for the child? This is also good for your conversations with the teacher, who ideally is a strong partner in figuring out what inspires your kid. Tactful and respectful communication makes your job and the teacher's job much easier, of course. Keep track of when you talk with the teacher and what suggestions the teacher makes. Those who haven't experienced this kind of communication might be surprised by how helpful it is for the student. Also, remember that the teacher is working with many other parents too. You should certainly communicate what you need, but keep it focused, as this is a stressful time for absolutely everybody. Now, finally, note that the idea isn't to cram in a bunch of facts. That's not real learning, right? By the time these children graduate from high school, for all we know, there'll be an implant in their ear available to produce simple facts when needed. It's not that memorization is unimportant, but it's not nearly as important as curiosity, creativity, self-direction, and responsibility. For these, you may have a special opportunity now to figure out what works really well for your children. If you are helping them develop these things, you can be pretty confident that they'll be okay going forward. Now, as we think about things like that, I think it gives us a good frame for what kinds of questions might be in our minds and our hearts as we're dealing with, trying to help our children with this online instruction, remote learning, distance learning, all of these things. This is an opportunity, and let's see it that way, because a lot of the worries that are out there are ones that are really not as big as you may think, and will hopefully assuage some of the concerns as we go forward. Tatiana, I know that as we asked for questions over the course of the week from Facebook groups and different people, you got a number of really, really strong ones, and let's start with this one.
Yes, one of the biggest questions I got is, how do I find out what my child is expected to know by the end of any particular school year? So parents are asking, is there a place I can go or a resource I can use? And yes, thankfully, we have standards of learning. We have instruction that we can get from teachers. So I would encourage any parents who are wondering, what does my child need to know by the end of grade 2 math, for example, to contact their teacher. Thank you, Rushton, for putting this up. Contact their teacher and say, can you provide me a short list? Or you can go on the website of your school district, state, or province to look it up. This is an example from my home province of British Columbia, where you can see the top 5 big ideas for grade 2 math. And then you can go down and see the competencies that are listed out a little bit more discreetly and in low-level detail. So you can know, by the end of the school year, I would really like my child to know that hundreds can be in ones, fives, tens. We know that we want to do pattern work, that we want to look at graphs that convey information pictorially. We want to look at addition and subtraction up to the numbers 100. When you have that in your mind, you can really gear your learning on a day-to-day basis to those goals. So I think the top level summary and knowing where to find it is so key. Basically, ask your teacher or go onto Google and see if you can find the standards of learning. Or there are a lot of different words that it's called in different states, but basically if you look for learning standards, you'll be able to find something to guide you.
Good deal. So when I was looking at this question, one of the things I thought is just, well, okay, well, where do you start with Google? And so I just chose Oregon, right? And if you say, you go to Google and you put in Oregon Learning Standards, what you're going to find is a set of results that start with the Oregon Department of Education, which is pretty cool because you go to their site and they've got all of these different pieces here divided into different subjects. And if you click on one of these, you'll see that they've got it divided into other pieces as well. And you click on any one of those and you can begin to see what it is that Oregon thinks is about right for different levels with different subjects, which allows you to, I think, much more easily get a sense of, okay, here are things worth mentioning. And the more often that they're on the child's radar, the easier it's going to be for that child to both retain the material covered and also begin to make connections with other things they learn.
And then another question I got from neighbors, colleagues, and friends is, how do I deliver lessons at home? My child has been going to school for a number of years. They're very used to the school routine. Now I'm at home. I may have other demands on my time, like working from home or other children to take care of. How do I deliver the lessons? Especially this is key in areas where the online learning modules have not completely replaced the school day. Luckily, delivering lessons at home is something that is a lot more flexible because you have a smaller number of students than a teacher in a classroom may have, and you don't have to be as oriented to time. You don't have to say 10:15 is language arts, 11 o'clock is lunch, 1:30 is going to be science. You can follow the child's rhythms a little bit. It's one of the really nice things about doing home learning. If your child's a little bit grumpy in the morning, you can wait until after breakfast. You can insert one of these ideas that you know. You can use it. You can also go through play and say, okay, do you want to line up your cars and we'll go the numbers 1 through 10, and then we can sort the cars into blue and orange and green. We can make some patterns with the cars while we're playing, and this can be part of your math component because you know that by the end of the year for kindergarten, that numbers 1 through 10 is a key core competency. So you can schedule the day a little bit more flexibly, and it also relieves parents who may have a meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning and think, oh, I'm not dealing with my students learning, but you can do it at bedtime, bath time. You can do it playing outside. As long as you know where you're headed, then you can start to include a lot of these concepts, as Rushton mentioned, in lots of different ways, and including play.
This comes back to the idea of the art and science of teaching, right? So you want to know what to cover, but it's not as if you have to stand in front of some board and direct things as the child sits in a desk facing you. That's actually just not what you need to do and probably want to do at all. Instead, use the time to really say, okay, well, what works for my child? These are the things that, in keeping organized, you're keeping notes on. What is it that really gets the child excited? You're going to be doing a certain amount of negotiating with time along the way, and that's totally fine. The point is to figure out what works well for your child. And as you do this, and you get into that space of, okay, I'm sharing ideas with other parents. What are some things that really worked for them? Don't put it all on your own shoulders, right? There are loads of things out there that can be useful. So Tatiana, what do you think of this next question right here?
Exactly. How do I find time to do all of this learning? Parents do have a lot of demands on their time right now. There are a lot of constraints that families have. I think the really nice thing to think is that learning can be at any time. If you are creating moments of learning where you're having fun, you're delving into a topic, but you're following your child's interests. So for example, I have a child who's very into dinosaurs at the moment. We do a lot of learning about dinosaurs, but it also helps us meet our core competencies for learning about habitats or the life cycle, or even the water cycle, so that we can talk about dinosaurs doing all of these things. You can do it on the weekends. You can do it on a Zoom chat with your parents. You can say, Mom, Dad, can you talk to my son about dinosaurs for a quick second? I am going to be doing this thing, but maybe you could tell them a story about dinosaurs, or they could show you their latest coloring sheet or diorama. So all of these moments do add up to the school day. They can be weekends, they can be mornings and nights and lunch hours, but altogether these moments really create a set of learning experiences that are going to take your child really far.
This gets us back to this idea of minutes and moments, right? As you are going through your day, if you're trying to add up minutes, you're probably doing this in a way that's not as effective as it might be for your child, right? Think in terms of what are some topics I want to hit over the course of the day, and watch for opportunities. It might be that at a time you weren't expecting, something comes up that allows you to say, oh yeah, that's a little like this, isn't it? And see where they go with it. Don't be kind of white knuckled around the idea of they must learn this fact now. That's actually not where you want to be. Instead, you're trying to develop those things we talked about before: curiosity, creativity, right? And if they are getting into that space of learning, that they can ask questions about this, that they're not separating their idea of learning, like there's fun in life and then there's like learning. Instead, learning is something that happens all the time, and especially allows you as a parent to grow with the child in some really, really productive ways for how that child begins to see the world, and especially sees their relationship with you as a parent. So I'll take the next one, right? So how will school closures affect my child's learning over the long term? So this is another one of these cases of complexity is worth remembering, right? The short answer is probably not tons. Now, let me explain that, though, as we get into it, because a lot of people are sweating this out. Oh, no, we've lost 3 months. They won't be able to get into Harvard. That's a completely unproductive way of thinking about using your time effectively. Instead, think for a minute about summers. How do summers work? Because there's this thing that we talk about in education called the summer slide, right? So a kid leaves in the spring, comes back in the fall, and they have forgotten loads of things that they learned during the previous year. Now, let's talk about what that is, though. it is not as if it is a given for every child and they all, forget the same amount. So what's the difference? Is it like raw intelligence? Well, no, actually it's probably an issue of how often these different concepts have been on the radars of the children at all. So children who finish in the spring, and they and their parents, grandparents, guardians never talk about any of the content that was covered over the course of the school year. They never encounter it in things that they read or watch. Yeah, they're going to forget tons. On the other hand, if you are a parent who knows what kinds of things were covered and you can kind of bring these back in as a part of conversations, like Tatiana was saying, during playtime, during dinner, they don't have to dominate, your conversation or anything like that. But if it just gets back on the radar, it is far more easily brought forward by the child when it comes time to discussing it again. It's the same for these months. Now, the teachers and the schools are doing what they can to keep learning going. And some are doing a better job than others, and that's perfectly normal. Often the ones that are doing a really good job are doing a really good job because they are learning with and from the parents as they go, which I think is a really good way to see yourself. You're a partner in the learning. And so sometimes people see themselves in very combative ways that almost never helps the child, right? So what you want to do is you want to be in a space where it's like, no. What we want to do is we want to figure out what works for my kiddo. There are all sorts of challenges, learning disabilities, different things that can be all the more difficult right now. However, with a good relationship with the school, chances are good that you'll be able to make some good things happen there. Tatiana, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that in this first school closure, yes, we are just kind of making our learning plans as we go. I think one of the really interesting things to consider is if school closures happen again, how can we use what we've learned this time to help guide us in our future learning? So Rushton, I don't know if you wanted to speak about this, that in the next school year, if we have any school closure, how can we take some of our lessons that we've learned to apply them? Respectful communication with teachers, knowing the standards of learning ahead of time, and perhaps having a small set of ideas to carry us in future terms. Would you agree?
Yeah. I talk about this in training teachers a lot. What kinds of things do you learn from the things you try, and how do you move those things forward? Because the chances are pretty good that what we're experiencing right now with what we in California call shelter in place, that this is stuff we'll do again. Now, if not, okay, no problem. We know what to do if not. But if we do come back to it, how do we make that work well for the children? And that's going to be a function of having really creatively brainstormed through possibilities that we encounter with this. It's the same is true for you. If you are engaged in your child's learning in ways that you never have before, ideally you will not need to be spending tons and tons of time doing this, in the coming years. But on the other hand, you may be picking out little pieces that make it much easier for your child. That point about having things on their radar and bringing things back and asking little questions as you go and helping your child become comfortable saying, I didn't understand that. Hey, well, let's look at it again. Maybe we can talk to somebody else as well. That's confusing to me as well. There are lots of little things about the nature of your communication that may end up being something that you learn from very effectively as a part of what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, also kind of in the space about helping children right now, there is this question that happens all the time with parents, right? Should I worry about my child's grades right now? So a lot of parents are way too focused on grades. And let me explain what that means, because it sounds like I don't take grades seriously. I do. Grades are important, but we need to have them in the proper place. So there is a Japanese Zen expression, which is this: don't mistake your finger for the moon, as if you are pointing to the moon. And the moon is the issue, right? But it's all about the finger. And that works in this space as well. If you look at grades, the grades are your finger. The learning is the moon. The learning is what really counts. The learning is what's magical. And if grades reflect the learning, great. But what's important is the learning. Now, if you are a parent of an elementary school child right now, your grades right now, it is not as if this is going to be the issue that makes or break a child going forward. It's just not. What really matters is the child developing academic confidence, developing an ability to ask cool questions about the things they encounter. Are they creatively brainstorming with others? Are you helping them get comfortable doing those kinds of things? because if you show that you are someone who's learning as well, they will embrace the idea that that's a part of how things work. And I think grades often kind of get in the way of the more effective learning that comes from those kinds of conversations. What if my school's method of online instruction doesn't work for my child? All right, Tatiana, why don't you start us off with that one?
I've actually heard from a few parents who have mentioned this, and their concerns have been different in each case. In one case, a child was having 6 hours a day of Zoom conference calls as a school district and an elementary school were seeking to recreate the classroom experience on Zoom. That was very taxing for a kindergartner and difficult for the family to support because the kindergartner needed assistance by sitting at the computer and doing tasks. So that's one area. Another area is, what if you have multiple children and don't have multiple connected devices? Maybe you have just one family computer, or your multiple children's schedules are overlapping with each other and there is not enough parent resources to facilitate all of that learning. My biggest recommendation is engage your teacher, explain the issue that you're seeing with your student, document what you've been doing on the outside of school hours with your students so that your teacher can feel comfortable knowing that your student is continuing to learn and having a rich experience outside of what's being provided by the district or the school. And then ask, what can we do? My child is struggling with all of these hours. Can we reduce them? Can I send you pictures or video of us doing stuff offline to supplement what's being done online? Or maybe, multiple devices are an issue. Maybe the school can assist with an extra device. Or maybe there's a way to stagger the learning schedule so that the whole family doesn't feel like they're being overtaken by the demands of the online learning.
Right. And time again to remember about the difference between minutes and moments, right? If a school wants you to have a child online at particular times, do what you can to accommodate it, for sure, because that the teacher has certainly worked to have things ready, especially if they are using different tools in a way that allow some interaction between peers. I mean, a lot of kids, one of the stressful pieces for them right now is they're missing that interaction with their friends, right? And so getting a chance to do that in a class context is quite important. That said, the first thing you need to watch for is what is working for the child, right? Sometimes, a child will get zeroed in on something that they're really worried about and kind of shut down. And if you reach out to other parents and your teacher about those things, you'll probably find that there are things that they can do. The schools often have specialists who are prepared to connect with you and to talk to the child in hopefully a way that will get past the particular barrier at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who do have issues with connectivity or devices, know that a lot of school districts and schools have gone to a lot of trouble to make sure that there are Chromebooks or other things available that you can borrow, and that there are companies that have stepped up to say, we'll make sure that families have some kind of access at this time. So let them know that you're worried about that. We've only got one device at home, and we've got 3 kids, and it's really difficult. Let them know, and they might be able to help out. So as we mentioned before, there are loads of challenges with what we're experiencing right now. That's fine. What we need to do is learn from them and to use the environment as best we can. All the resources that we talk about as we go forward are resources that we'll come back to as well. I want to make sure that people have the chance to prepare questions. So if you are joining us for the recording, please put some different thoughts and questions in there that we can share as we go forward. I will also say that once we finish our 30-minute-ish recording with this, we'll stay on with anybody who may be part of this at the moment and says, I've got this question, I want to talk about it a little more length. Tatiana and I are happy to stay on with that. I want to point you to a couple more things before we finish up as well, because there are some great resources out there that if you don't know about, it's worth exploring with your child. One is Wide Open School. Now, this is just a really interesting effort that popped up quite recently, right? The people who are behind it, saw a lot of what was happening and started preparing these kinds of things, and did so in a way that actually produced this really strong thing. Take a look. So you see all these things. There's learning differences in emotional well-being, but there's also science and math and social studies. Go down, there's a field trip piece here, and there are some very cool field trips that are there. If you go and you take a look, you're going to find lots of different things. So maybe the M&M factory tour is something that you want to do with your child. That's something the Food Network made available. How toilet paper is made. I mean, these, how do you go to the bathroom in space? These are the kinds of things that kids will remember, and you build off of those as references for helping children learn more and more. Additionally, if your child needs more reading, Storyline Online is a wonderful resource. Famous people reading these great stories, right? And one of the best things about this is that the reader never gets tired, right? So if your kid is like, I love that story, they want the person to read it to them again and again, why not, right? Why not? Especially if you're paying attention, looking for the vocabulary that's part of that, building so that that can become a part of their conversational pieces as well. Lots and lots of cool things there. Rivet is a tool that is out there that allows you to add an app to your phone or iPad, and there's a web app as well. And this is leveled reading. So this is stuff that is supposed to be appropriate at particular levels. Don't get too kind of worked up about, my child is having trouble with her grade level piece or his grade level piece. Go back one and find a story and work with that. Totally fine. And additionally, if your child's able to jump ahead, that's good too. Just as long as they're finding stuff that intrigues them, we're in a good space. And then finally, PBS Kids for Parents. If you haven't taken a look at this, all kinds of cool games and video apps and all sorts of stuff. There's a 24/7 channel that they include in here. Really, really strong resources. So we'll have all of these in the links that are part of the slides. You'll be able to get to the slides. Once you get my email, I'll point you back to our webinars page where we'll have all the different links that you'll need. So those will be available to you. So some cool things coming in. Ben in Michigan, if anyone is trying to recreate the face-to-face experience via video conference, please ask them very nicely to stop. I can't imagine how taxing that would be mentally for the teachers and the students. It is certainly the case that in ed tech discussions, right, the advice is plenty of breaks, because if you're trying to recreate school, remember, like, recess and breaks are a part of school. So it's really, really important that people get away from screens as they go, for sure. Janet says, I have had some great times with my students one-on-one sharing books together. You know, the one-on-one moments really, really matter. So, you know, there's been loads of discussion in educational circles about, okay, this video chat thing, you know, there are privacy issues. How do we deal with that? These are all very good questions. But at core, a lot of children need to see their teacher. They need to see that smiling face, that person who can say, it's going to be all right. I'm really excited about what you're learning. Tell me more about that. Having those other people who can supplement good messages that you are giving your children it's just critical for the child's well-being at the moment. Ben asked, that's what I'm hearing from my teachers. A lot of good one-on-one moments. Totally, totally true. There are so many good opportunities with these things. And really what matters is, with any resources that are out there, right? And the moments that you have with the teacher, use what you have and use them well. If you're like, we don't have a computer, we don't have access, I'm just watching this as, you know, via something else. Look, if all you've got is chalk and slate, use it and ask good questions and have fun with it. That's how things work. All right, our PE teacher is creating Keep Moving videos on YouTube for his students that last for a few weeks. Brief, less than 5-minute activities students can do at home. Very cool. This week we brainstormed some ideas, and he's going to start challenging students to create their own videos and submit via Google Classroom. You see the creative piece in there, where the children begin creating things themselves. They're not just consuming things. They're actually becoming people who come to understand that they are capable of teaching others as well. There's something very, very powerful in getting kids to be creators as we go. We need to start winding things down, but as we go forward, do know that, that there are loads of different information and links and possibilities at the Next Vista webinar page, and we will get you to those as well. The nextvista.org site is all about videos, helping kids, very short videos about learning different things, or about communities around the world, or service to others, or careers. And we're trying to build the largest library, free library in the world for kids who are learning English. So if that's of interest, stay in touch with me. I am very interested in helping you help your schools however we might. I send out a newsletter once a month to about 8,000 teachers around the world. I hope you will join on that as we go. I'll get you that link as well. We do contests where we ask kids in 90 seconds or less to creatively explain stuff, and we get some gems in from all corners of the planet, where kids and different teachers in different places have said, hey, I've got a really good way of talking about this, and that becomes a part of our library. The service videos are things we're real proud of. Kids telling about people who do good for others. That's important stuff to have out there. Tatiana, let's finish up.
Yes, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's participating today on the webinar, and to let everyone know, as we all experience this time of a little bit of upheaval in our learning strategies, it can be a great opportunity to engage some new skills and connect in new ways to foster some creativity if we can, but also be patient and gentle with yourself. This is definitely a new learning curve for all of us and for all of our parents and students. So whatever we can do to be helpful, let us know. And my email address is at the bottom. Rushton has his contact information too. We look forward to hearing from you guys. And if there's interest, I would love to do more webinars on older students if there's questions. But good luck, and let us know how it's going.
I invite anyone to stay in touch with me. My email address is there on the screen, and I answer every email I get eventually. So feel free to put something in that way. The main idea for us is that we're getting you past some of the big stresses that are a part of this very stressful time. But just as a final thought, let your child know that you believe in them and that you are learning new things about how they see the world. For yourself, know that the extra time together is something you both will remember for years to come. Thank you for joining in our webinar. We hope that you have had plenty of cool ideas and possibilities, kind of jump through your minds as a part of it, and we hope you'll stay in touch. If you have joined us live and you're not just watching the recording, we'll stick around and happy to answer more questions. We hope to see you again.